course, we've had this speech to Congress from Donald Trump, which happened between 2 and 4 in the morning UK time. The Mail reporting an olive branch being offered by President Zelensky. Does it look as though Donald Trump is accepting the olive branch? Are things back on track for the deal that they were trying to do last Friday?
This is the great deal maker. It looks to me like he's got his deal, because we think the mineral deal pact is probably going to be signed, could even be signed today or this week. So it looks like bully boy tactics, if you want to call them that, have worked,
but
because Zelensky is backing down.
But the sticking point was Zelensky and Keir Starmer wanting, as part of the deal, there to be American security guarantees in Ukraine. Trump has withdrawn US military aid. Does that mean that the deal's being done on Trump's terms, not on Zelensky and Europe's terms?
Well, I think so. Also, of course, if he gets the mineral deal, which he's going to, there'll be a huge amount of American personnel working in Ukraine. In a sense, that's a form of protection as well against a Russian attack.
Should we have a listen just to... because, of course, the significance of letters, old-fashioned letters in this, all of this diplomacy. It's Keir Starmer, of course, last week brandishing that letter from the King in order to get Trump on our side. And then yesterday, or early this morning, last couple of hours, the letter from Zelensky to President Trump. So, wouldn't that be beautiful? He says it's time to stop this madness.
Look, it's me. The praise, the strong leadership, I'm afraid, is Zelensky has to say it, but he's not thinking that. He's thinking this is a former ally that's now a hostile power trying to sell us out to Putin. And Trump is the type of bullying leader who will grab an olive branch and hit you back with it, using it as a weapon.
But the war's about to end, Kevin.
Well, the problem Zelensky...
I think so.
The problem Zelensky...
Putin want this war to end?
Yeah, the problem Zelensky has is he needs his tormentor, because he needs those military supplies. But if the war's going to end, on whose terms is it going to end? Is it going to end on Putin's terms, where Putin retains what he has taken by force? He already has guarantees that Ukraine won't be in NATO. Gives him a pause. He can rearm. He can regroup. Financial restrictions will be lifted by the US. Will the UK and Europe then be strong-armed in following? Look, Putin is winning.
Yeah.
He was winning militarily.
Is it? But that's the point.
Slowly.
Ukraine was never going to win this war.
It's a surrender. It's a surrender.
Yeah.
Zelensky has been forced to surrender.
Trump said he'd end the war on day one. It's not taken day one. It's going to be a few weeks. But Trump's tactic, he's the great deal maker. It looks like he's pulled it off.
OK, but the trouble is, if Putin feels he's won this war...
Yes, I agree.
...and there aren't American backstop troops, security guarantees protecting Ukraine and the eastern flank of that part of Europe, what does Putin think he can win next?
I suspect if the chemicals, the minerals deal is done, there will be some form of military backstop from America. I would imagine. They'll be protecting their assets.
But I find that in itself offensive when you have a country that has been invaded, which Trump says started the war when it didn't, and now he's going to pillage it. He now wants to rip it off. He wants to take its natural resources on his terms.
And if you're a Baltic state, or if you are Poland, what would you be thinking?
You'd be very worried.
Yeah. And why would you be worried? Because Putin, you think, is celebrating that he's won this victory, and why not do it again?
Yeah. Well, it depends if there is a American military presence there. But when you say about pillaging the country, look, when America backed Britain in the Second World War, we only paid off the debt from that in 2006. America was never going to give the money for nothing. This is their quid pro quo.
And in America took sovereign bases, which are still here a little bit.
Yeah.
America, effectively, in Norfolk and Suffolk. But if you look at this, we've got to remember Putin has been damaged too. He's not been the walkover he thought. He hasn't won the war in 3 days. He's lost a lot of people. The economy's been
there's huge sanctions on his economy.
Hit hard. So I think the betrayal of Ukraine by Trump will be one of those stains on American history, but it won't mean necessarily that Putin will invade somewhere else, because it's been at enormous cost.
But remember what Trump said, America first. This is all about America first. And Americans, I don't think a lot of them probably even know where Ukraine is.
Yeah, which is why it was stupid of politicians like Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Nigel Farage and so on to be backing Trump for the presidency. Because you could see this coming down the line and it was going to be damaging to Britain, it's going to be damaging to Europe.
They are our
damaging
greatest,
to
most
Ukraine.
powerful ally.
Ally?
Yes.
Ally?
Well, whose side do you want us to be?
No,
Kevin,
look, I don't
in
think. I
this
think we're caught in the middle.
conflict? Yeah.
Look, it's almost there used to be slogans in the Cold War, either Moscow or Washington, be somewhere in the middle.
Meanwhile, the deputy president, vice president, J.D. Vance, had this remarkable comment about the European plan, Starmer's plan, to guarantee peace in Ukraine, and the troops that we might place there. Now, he says he's not talking about us.
Well, he's lying.
But have a listen to what he said.
Lying.
Because at the point he said this, it's important to say before we play it, at the point he says this, the only countries who've committed to forces on the ground are Britain
and France.
Nobody else has.
Is
Nope.
that what he thinks of the UK?
Yeah.
We're some random country that hasn't fought a war.
And fought side by side with America in Afghanistan and Iraq.
And Iraq.
636 British servicemen and women killed, hundreds more suffering life-changing injuries. It's deeply offensive. And he's rowing back saying he didn't mean France and UK. Who did he mean then?
Well, Nigel Farage and those in Reform and other on the right of politics who back him should stop and pause.
Well, Farage criticised him over this. He said he was completely wrong.
But they've supported
completely wrong. Right. He did say that.
They've supported a monster. Now, it's no surprise in some ways he's saying this because he sees the rest of the world as something to be kicked, and Trump and Vance like to turn on democracies and former allies. And let's not forget, when Vance went to Germany recently, who did he see? He saw the leader, Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, which is the party nearest to the side that lost in the Second World War when we stood up and we fought and we thankfully beat them.
But, Andrew, what a chilling state of the relationship between the UK and the US.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the Vice President could have said, it's a brave effort.
Yes, he could.
We know how powerful those troops are because they fought alongside our troops.
And at least there's two countries in Europe that have offered or pledged to put troops on the ground.
Some random country that hasn't fought a war.
The irony, the terrible irony, that he should say that on the same day that the government is announcing plans for VE Day celebrations, where in the first week of May, over 4 days, our country, with allies around the world, will be celebrating incredible lengths and sacrifices made to defend democracy in Europe from a fascist threat. And what a day to disparage countries who did that 80 years ago.
I know.
Deeply offensive. And saying it won't wash to say he didn't mean Britain or France. He did.
Yeah, of course.
He did. Nobody else he could have talked
This state visit is getting better and better, isn't it? I mean, you know, the number of people protesting from different backgrounds is going to be enormous.
Well, you could imagine that President Trump's visit could coincide with celebrations, VE Day celebrations. But right now, that doesn't feel... If we're some random country...
I suspect the King's diary is going to be quite full.
Yeah. I've got to add, though, I think it'd be a big mistake to put British troops into Ukraine because we've chosen a side already. They're not UN blue helmet peacekeepers, and if Putin is half as malign as Keir Starmer has told us time after time, there's going to be shooting. If there's shooting, then you shoot back, and then you're sucked into a great conflagration.
But the problem is, Kevin, you know, even if overnight the speech from the president signals that he's willing to do the deal with Zelensky, and Zelensky signalling without security guarantees, in the absence of security guarantees, this is not a deal which people have confidence in. There's going to have to be troops on the ground, peacekeeping troops on the ground to police the deal in the early stage. And if it's not British troops, whose troops is it going to be?
Yeah, but Britain's taken a side. We've supplied weapons. We've imposed sanctions. You're not neutral. You're going into the front line. You're there alongside Ukrainian troops. You send those peacekeepers, called peacekeepers in, but you're on the Ukrainian side. You're not going to be accepted by the Russians as neutral. I don't know. I just don't know
who you put in. The world feels as though it's changed, though. It's very hard for Britain thinking about... You know, this is why this debate we're going to have later is so kind of interesting. Is it right for Britain to be giving military support to Ukraine, including peacekeeping forces? Shouldn't we be spending the money here in Britain? But, of course, it's so close to us. And if America, which has been the guarantee for 80 years of stability and peace in Europe through their military engagement, is withdrawing, it's a vacuum. And who's going to fill it? Are we going to leave it to the French?
Why?
Are the Germans going to step up? Are we really not going to be part of it? Or are we going to have to do something which is going to cost us billions of pounds because it's on our doorstep?
Right. You can go for fortress Britain defence and just, see the North Sea and the Channel as a moat, or you can see more forward defending. But then it's how you defend yourself. And weapons to Ukraine are partly that. But the Germans, of course, because they've got the history of invading Russia and tens of millions of people died in the Second World War, I can see why they're reluctant to have peacekeepers. But Poland is against, and Poland's right there, border with Ukraine, experience of Russian, then Soviet occupation. They don't want to send peacekeepers. I think.
But Canada's saying yes.
Yeah.
Ireland is saying yes. Can Britain say no?
Yes. Well, look, who's proposed it? It seems to be a Macron-Starmer push. And I just go back. We talked about Vance ignoring the fact that Britain fought alongside in Iraq and Afghanistan. I believe that was a mistake. I think history shows invading Iraq and invading Afghanistan were mistakes. Yes, in Afghanistan, it meant Osama bin Laden could be caught, although he's actually caught in Pakistan in the end. But the Taliban came back. In Iraq, unleashed mayhem across the Middle East, and there was a blowback in Britain with terrorist attacks.
Your position is not going to be the position that either Keir Starmer or, it seems, Kemi Badenoch is going to take. Well, I think there will be British troops on the ground, don't you?
It feels like it. I don't think, but I tell you this, I don't think there'll be public support for it.
No, I wonder.
I think people will be thinking, do I want my son or daughter?
I know. We talked about the possibility of conscription or some form of national service yesterday. We know that out of Gen Z, which is effectively the age of our adult children, only 1 in 10 say they would be prepared.
And we've got so few
France and Germany leave it to Ireland.
But Germany's not in favour at the moment, unless the new Chancellor, when he comes in, changes their position, is against this plan. Because I think it's so risky. I really, really think it's dangerous.
It's definitely risky, but the alternative also feels pretty risky.
And hugely expensive.
New polling shows that the majority of the British public don't now want the state visit by President Trump. This is a survey for 38 Degrees by Survation. Almost half of those polled say the way that Starmer is standing up for Ukraine and representing the UK on the world stage made them proud to be British. And 51% say President Trump does not deserve a state visit.
This is why it's so hard being Prime Minister, because, look, we don't want a state visit, and we don't want our troops on the ground in Ukraine, and we don't want Putin to win, and we don't want to have cuts in our public services. We don't want any of those things. But the trouble is, you've got to make some decisions. What are you actually going to do? What is this deal they're going to do? Is it going to last? And how do you teach Putin a lesson?
But also, he couldn't possibly... The diplomatic explosion of withdrawing an invitation for a state visit to Trump would be off the Richter scale.
I don't think he's worthy of a state visit. Or we've had some wrong-uns in the past on state visits. But there's a bit of me now thinks it'd be great when he comes, because the protests...
Oh, you'll be out there, won't you, shouting at him?
No, well, I'll be a journalist. I'll be covering the people shouting at him. But, of course, it looks like they're going to take him to Windsor, which is a fortress, and lock him up in the... in the old castle, And there's going to be no horse-drawn carriage ride along the Mall or anything like that.
Let's turn our attention to...
If you're advising Keir Starmer, you'd advise him
to have offered one, yes.
And now he's offered it. Would you advise him to withdraw it?
No.
Let's turn our attention to some domestic matters, because, that is part of the tension, isn't it? What are we spending money on over there if we're not spending money over here? I mean, one of the stories I think that was so shocking yesterday, and it's not far from where I live, is a boy of 16 shot dead near Stockwell Tube Station in South London. I mean, we can't even keep our children safe. Shot dead. Absolutely shocking what's happening. And it feels like we have seen an epidemic of knife attacks and murders. But how are people getting hold of guns? I mean, for the young people who have to use those tube stations, I mean, let alone the family who this morning are dealing with the loss of their child. What is going on? We have a story this morning about something that actually sort of goes under the radar a lot, but whenever we talk about it, people are very, very upset, and that's shoplifting.
Yeah.
So more than 3/4 of shop workers have been abused at work, and over half suffering threatening behaviour. And shoplifting has more than doubled since the pandemic. Our reporter, Richard Gaisford, has spoken to a shoplifter, completely unapologetic about their behaviour.
It's their job.
Says it's their job.
Yeah.
And says it's the fault of security if security can't do their job as well as she can. Let's have a listen.
This is one reason shops are shutting, because they're losing so much money through theft.
That's not my fault.
Well, it is, because you're stealing.
No.
It's everything to do with you, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not my fault. It's not. It's their fault. They should have better security. They should have more staff workers. They should be on their job like I am. I'm better at my job than they are at their job, and that's the bottom line.
It's appalling because there's in the little local Tesco I live, I talked to the security guard there. He's been told he must not confront somebody who's stealing stuff in case there's violence. So it's almost pointless having him there, and they know it. These shoplifters, they've virtually it's a license to just go and nick stuff. You see them taking stuff off the shelf. You can remonstrate yourself and say, "Oi, what are you doing?" They don't care.
Listen,
the security guard won't intervene.
Well, listen,
it is.
That's organised.
Yeah.
And I think look, some of it is driven by austerity and cost of living and people being really... And I can see... There's a difference between a mother or a father nicks a bottle of Calpol or something because their kid is sick and they can't afford it, right? It's still wrong, you're breaking the law, but I think it's different. But that is just turning it into a business. And the chutzpah there... It's kind of one of those moments where all my liberal instincts go away, and I think, well, all right, let's just lock you up for 50 years and throw away the key. Then, if that's how you think,
I'm totally agreeing with you.
If you think you can do whatever, but it has to be.
Kevin, 50 years. I mean,
or 100. Okay.
But even at all would be better than what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. But there
is has been kind of caught before, and they're still going.
And it's so tough for small shops who aren't Tesco or Sainsbury's, who've got far more resources. They're closing because of it.
There's a breakdown. There's a societal breakdown.
Prices. We saw this week food prices are going up. Of course they are, because supermarkets and shops are having to pay for so much.
60% of shop workers say they want to see a ban on offenders. I mean, that seems entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
We obviously have anonymised that particular individual. But if her face was at the front of every shop in the local area, would that help, or is that...
You're going to have a lot of faces, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, the number of faces now, how could you remember them all, and then you just go to another shop?
Who is going to physically restrain them from going in? Because of this caution, don't confront them.
Well, you understand the caution. Again, I'll come back. We had this discussion a while back. If I was a minimum wage or just over the minimum wage shop worker, I'm going to think, right, I'm working for normally a big chain, a big corporation that's got very, very fat profits. Am I going to really risk my my health by tackling somebody? I think I'm not, actually.
Yeah.
But there's been this I mean, the law's about to change, but it's been the case that if it's less than £200 of shop working...
Yeah, the police, they don't even bother.
Then you don't even engage.
Yeah.
And if you think to the person we're speaking to, the woman we're speaking to, the shoplifter, she's doing all day, 9 different black bags. I bet every shop she goes into, she steals something less than £200. She knows even if she gets caught in one, should be OK. But the accumulation over the day, if she gets away with it, is thousands and thousands of pounds.
But Ed, change the law, but you're in a police control room and you get, look, it's, XY shop here. We've detained somebody taking a packet of Frosties.
They're not going to come.
Right, it's £2.50. All right, then we won't go to the house that's been currently burgled, or the fight that's in a pub, or... terrible case of
we'll be chasing hate crime on a computer.
Or
that's what we'll be doing.
Very little policing it is there.
So we're going to speak
murder investigation. It just ain't going to happen.
Yeah. We're going to speak to Michelle Whitehead, who works in a shop and is also a representative of the union which produced these numbers. And Michelle says, we had a couple of armed robberies recently. She came in for work. the other day, 10 minutes after someone had jumped the counter with a machete
God.
and stolen all the booze. We're easy pickings. We work alone. A lot of us are women.
Yeah.
On Sunday night, a gang came in and emptied the shelves. We don't get enough police help.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, you never see a police officer. I'm not... Because there's not enough of them.
No.
And they're deployed in the wrong way.
Yeah, and we need them.
On the streets.
We need
Bobby's
them
on the
to
beat.
stop these... Whoever's got a gun and is shooting at 16-year-olds outside tube stations.
Or a machete, rather than somebody who is taking a jar of pickled onions.
Yeah, goodness
I'm
me.
afraid, look, I think in the control room, if we're taking shoplifting seriously, you've got to say, we're going to act now about it, and you've got to have the resource to do that. And the moment it gets out there, this is something which we can just turn a blind eye to. It's a disaster.
Yeah, that's right. That's why it's happening.
So I was in my local supermarket, I feel I'm the only one paying. And I just see people walking out of the door.
It's terrible.
Yeah,